Hello and welcome to Access, volunteer-produced community television, shamelessly promoting our friends and neighbors. And one of our friends is with us today, Rita Wong. Welcome to the show, Rita.
Thanks, Ed.
Rita is a Vancouver-based writer and teaches at Emily Carr University, and she's working on a water project, and that project brought her to the Fort McMurray Healing Walk. That's what we want to learn about, Rita. What is the Fort McMurray Healing Walk?
Well, the Healing Walk was started 3 years ago. It's an annual event, and it was started by Indigenous communities up north in northern Alberta and concerned citizens who are seeing the impact of the tar sands on their forests and lands and waters. It's about a 6-hour walk through the epicenter of the processing area where Suncor and Syncrude have their processing plants. And it's not your typical political protest. It's more a ceremonial walk. So there's a water ceremony, a pipe ceremony. There are offerings to the four directions. It's done to reassert the need for people to reconnect to the land and to the water that we rely on.
Tell us a little bit of how that connects to the water then. How did it bring you up there?
Well, first of all, my background is as a writer, so I'm interested in the poetics and the creative thinking that goes up around water. And if you trace one drop of water through its cycle, you'll see how we're connected to all sorts of places and people and animals and creatures we might not see. So that, for me, is really interesting to think about and really important to think about. But on a very practical level, up north, 1 barrel of oil destroys or poisons roughly 4 barrels of water. So it's an enormous water footprint that's being destroyed up there. And I think the question that's raised is water more important or is oil more important, or what's the balance between those things? So the folks up north in the walk are asserting that we really need to remember the importance of water and the healthiness of water as what is renewable and sustainable for future generations.
I was up there with you when you went up there, and we met the people. I wonder, can you tell me a little bit of how you feel about the people and the people that are in this?
Sure, for sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I was born in Calgary and grew up in Alberta, so I have an interest or a history that's implicated in the oil industry. I benefited from that personally, indirectly, through my education, etc. So I feel like, as anybody who lives in Alberta, I have the question of how do I give back? How do I build better relations with the Indigenous communities of that place than the things that I've historically inherited, first of all. And then second, in terms of your question, I guess I would say that we've seen a lot of films about what's happening up there. In Fort Chip, there was a Dr. John O'Connor who was intimidated when he raised concern about alarming instances of unusual cancers that are linked to the petrochemical industry showing up in Fort Chip, which is downstream of the tar sands. And certainly at the walk, we heard a lot of people speaking. There was a moment of silence for people who've died of cancers up north in Fort Chip and in Fort McMurray. And that's an ongoing reality for the people on the ground that I think we really need to listen to. When they're protecting the land, they're not only protecting it for themselves, but they're protecting it for everybody. In an era of global warming, we really need to value our forests and take better care of them.
I'm going to throw you maybe a little harder question here, because while up there too, aren't there a number of the people that are in these bands and the locals, they rely on the tar sands for their living and their standard. And on the other hand, I'm not quite sure what the balance is between the Indigenous communities, because some of them work in the tar sands as well. So how do we resolve that? Because it is an economic driver, there's no question about that. But it is also, as you've mentioned, a health problem downstream. So where do we go with that?
Well, it's interesting. Alberta recently released a land use plan that would increase the amount of protected areas. But the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation has also released a statement saying that it's a start, but it's not enough, that more land needs to be protected in terms of caribou well-being, watershed, fishing, all of those things. So I think that the ongoing discussion is really important, and that it needs to take into account Indigenous knowledge, which is very important, right, to the health of the land and the communities up there. And then I also want to say that as somebody who has friends and family who've worked in the industry, in the oil industry, my alarm is not with individuals in the industry. Like, there are very many talented, smart people working in that industry. But my concern is that the purpose of that industry and the system is using their talents wastefully. Like, we're using all that human talent to basically pump out more fossil fuels at a time when we need to be making a shift to renewable energy, to solar, to wind, to other forms of sustainable energy that because we're relying on these poisonous and dangerous fuels, we're not doing that enough. So countries like Norway and Germany, for instance, who also have relied on fossil fuels, are making a concerted effort in terms of solar, much more than I think we're doing in Canada, unfortunately. So I think that we have to distinguish between individuals who happen to need to make a living and the larger system that sort of organizes and channels their talent into a particular purpose or a larger goal.
Well, that larger system sees it as an oil mine, if that's what you want to call it. Mm-hmm. They can't decide whether to build a pipeline across British Columbia, pristine areas, or run it down into the States. Mm-hmm. There's all these things that are going on, but the simple thing that I found and what got me up there is I heard that people downstream and downwind are getting sick mm-hmm, mm-hmm. from this development, and this development seems to be quite a hectic pace. It's like hurry, hurry, hurry.
Yeah.
And the planning for future generations doesn't seem to be there. It seems to be all about this generation. And that's what I learned up there, that people are getting sick and there's such a great hurry. And I'm just wondering if you might want to comment on that and mm-hmm. what people can do.
For sure. I think first of all we need to slow down. And we really need to think about human responsibilities in terms of what's going on up there. And slow it down, think it through, think about the long-term consequences of what we do, because it will matter, and it does matter right now. And you're absolutely right, the cancers up there are unacceptable because they're a sign of something that, if you study ecology, you realize that things like that don't just stay in one place. They spread through wind, through air, through water, and what is dangerous in one place eventually comes around to other places. So, I mean, that's something to think about as well. And also, in terms of what I learned up there, I think it's really important to think about better relations with Indigenous communities, right? And the traditional lifestyles that are so important to try to preserve.
That is so important. We're coming near to the end of our interview, and I was just thinking about Cleo Lewis, who went back home to lead her people, and now counselor of her band, and just some of the people that we met up there are very. Amazing. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, Cleo actually said something that has really stuck with me, and she was one of the people who helped to organize the memorial march for the murdered and missing women in the downtown east side here in Vancouver when she lived in Vancouver. And now she's moved back up north to her home community around Fort McMurray, and she also drew a connection between the murdered and missing women down here and the murdered and missing water up there. So to think about water in terms of life and people, I think, is really important, and to think about how the logic of colonization is reinventing itself in different ways and affecting us today. Cleo's work is just really amazing in terms of drawing attention to that, and also not giving up, like saying that there are better ways to live and that we're capable of it. So I think rather than avoiding difficult questions, the Healing Walk actually challenges us to be the best we can as humans, to be as creative as we can, to be as honest as we can, and to really think thoroughly about the future for all of us.
Okay, we got to go now, Rita, and if you want to get a hold of people up there, I understand you just go to healingwalk.org. Is that correct? Right. Healingwalk.org. Thank you for being with us today, Rita.
Thanks for your time, Sid.
Comments to access@telus.net. We are not Shaw.